Hey guys, it's Matt. The person that did this for us asked for no recognition or shout out, but thank you for turning my first grade kindergarten level diagram, which that's the best I can do, into something that's really neat. And guys, at the end of this video, I'll tell you how I can email this out to people that want the PDF or the JPEG. And this gives us another great opportunity to talk about this again. A couple quick notes before we jump into this. If you can't see it, two things. I know a lot of people are driving. I will talk about what is said. You don't need to see this. But for those that want to see it and can't see, especially what you're looking at now, at some point in this presentation, I'll move to like a zoom in of each section to show you what you can't see. So don't worry about seeing it now. I'll be able to either email it to you or show you as this video moves on. But let's just start over and do a general recap of what was presented. I don't know, what is it, 6 months back I did this. Hopefully I'll never see my own diagram again. Hopefully I'll never come across that. It's that embarrassing. But the concept here, and if you don't need to have seen that video, we'll start over. The concept is my best understanding of how this reality works. I made these concentric rings. Okay, this is you in the middle. Ideally, a heart-based reality inside your own personal reality bubble. Not your own private Idaho, your own personal reality bubble. Now, I don't think anything here is very real. This is some simulation, but for lack of me understanding it, saying a natural simulation that they're trying to hijack into an unclean simulation. They're trying to change the nature of it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I don't think anything is very real, but the closest thing we'll ever get to real is inside our little personal reality bubble. Your spouse comes in, your kids sit on your lap, your dog or cat sits on your lap. Okay, hopefully it's a heart-based reality. Now, the point of me drawing these rings is as you move outward, the reality itself becomes more fluid, less real, corrupted, fake, basically all the worst parts of the Bible. You know what I mean? It just gets worse and worse as you move outward. The sirens at the edge of the reality bubble here on the screen, using its minions, its harpies, its degenerates, its George Bush creatures, its John Travoltas, its endless systems. What's on the outer periphery here, whatever it is, I'm not sure it's appropriate to even get into that here because it's all speculation anyway. It constantly calls for you. Okay, the sirens on the rocks. It calls for you in your reality bubble ship here to leave the only thing or the closest thing in this reality that's closest to truth and their own personal journey of a real human being. It calls for you to extend your consciousness and your attention outward. So if you, again, I know you can't see this and I'll focus in a little bit later, but we're just doing the general overview now, the 100,000 foot look down. On this first layer out, I wrote, you go from a heart-based reality, this is a brain here, to a head-based reality. Yes, we all, we all have an ego. We all have a conscious. We all operate with the frontal lobes here. We have to use governors and limitations like English. But this is kind of the bridge, the ego-based reality that is part of us being in the avatar. It's a bridge or a conduit between this outer edge that wants to get in and us kind of losing ourselves and giving our attention outward. So that the hands that are drawn here, which is a great, really nice representation of what I tried to do. What I drew looked like some sort of demented, deformed Kermit the Frog or something. This is good. It's taught us. It's always trying to break into our heart-based reality, which most people aren't even operating from a heart-based reality. They're operating solely and strictly from the head, the logical mind, the ego. So we at some point, maybe we did have a greater reality bubble protection, but most people just reach out and extend a hand to it. it's not like the corruptors on the outer edge of the screen. They are trying to get into our reality bubbles, but most people now they've done such a job. I'm not going to put an adjective on that. They've done such a job that people reach out to it. 10 million hands reach down. And in many, many ways, most people are reaching back out to it, to the corruptor on the outer edge. They want to embrace it. They want to look to its awards and its status, its accolades, and its Nobel Prizes, and its Employees of the Month declarations, and it's every award that it bestows on people. So the only way it gets in is if we operate into to put ourselves in the second ring here, which is the ego or head-based reality with the brain here as the representation. Okay, let's now start from the outer ring, the screen, and go inward and approach it that way. And before we start, this is very appropriate. At the top, I know you can't read it. It says, does your reality come from the screen in? Is that the reality that you're participating in daily? Do you just take all your clues from the screen inward, as it seems most people do? Or are you creating it from the heart outward? Are you pushing it from the heart outward? Which, of course, very quickly in this reality, you're going to bump into the screen, the culture, the society. You might have to take a bus to work. It's pretty hard to not bump into it. But are you generating it from the inside out? Most people, and I think you'll understand what I'm saying, most people are simply holding out their hand and waiting for the cue cards to be placed into their hands, waiting to be told how to live their lives from the screen inward. So looking at the final ring here, the outer ring, I call it the screen. I've called it the reality itself. We just will never, while we're in this avatar body, have a true understanding. But is there anything good that comes from the screen in? I don't see anything. Tell me if I'm missing something. So it's the screen, it's the reality itself. Again, as you go outward to this outer edge, everything is broken down. It's fake. It's less real. If you want to put it that way, where it's a device that creates lies, deception, distraction, the 7 deadly sins. I mean, okay, now who's doing it to us, or where's this coming from? This outer ring and its darkness trying to break inside your personal reality bubble. Remember, as we examine where the darkness, the deception, the lies, the corruption is coming from, whatever I've said, what stands behind or animates the screen. Remember one thing as we do this, because we may lose sight of this. Some of the smartest people that you'll ever meet believe that this is just simply a reflection of ourselves. Well, you get into this endless quandary. Well, something must be a Christian would say Satan. Something must be generating the initial deception, even if it's not able to pull it off on its own to break through into the personal reality bubble through the ego as the gateway in. So even if we do create it and it is a reflection of ourselves, well, what was the initial corruptor that created the the parasite or the virus or the worm or that the darkness was perpetuated upon itself by us as generator beings attached to spirit as quantum creators helping to create it. It is like, and then it's like the Catch-22 or the Mobius strip or the Ouroboros. I don't know. I mean, these are hard things. Just we're never going to know exactly. What's important is just be aware that a lot of smart people, and most of the old guard shaking their head, that this outer darkness, lies, deception is ultimately a feedback loop, a reflection of the collective, our collective selves. Okay, that's even if we don't know exactly the mechanism of the initial corruption. The initial corruption, boy, it's amazing. It goes right back to Genesis 1, right? The initial corruption then fed back upon itself by the reality creators in the center. But anyway, that's just getting a little out there. Just be aware that, if everybody returned to their heart center and just kind of had an epiphany, had a wake up moment, smart people believe this whole whatever is the darkness on the outside would basically cease to exist. It needs the energy of creative beings from their heart-based center. That's why it's always reaching in with its 10,000, 10 trillion hands saying, take my hand. Whether it be as trivial as covet the red carpet with Ryan Seacrest or anything else, or pay attention to what the governor of New York is going to say today and pay attention to this news item. It reaches in with 10 trillion sticky, slimy fingers. And most people gladly reach up to it and shake hands with it and then lick the slime off their hands. So remember that. We basically probably are power. We power it with loosh energy. It would cease to exist if everybody got a clue. But let's just remember that and move on, because that's just an endless path of endless speculation. In terms of what we can understand, this screen level, again, is where the darkness comes from, the lies, deception, distraction. It's fake, it's corrupt, but everybody has their own opinion as to what stands behind the screen. Or if it is darkness today on steroids, well, where does it come from? And one thing we can get out of the way is it's not the minions. Okay, the minions, an on-the-ground minion, somebody that's on television, like Bezos or Melvin P. or a governor or a president or a prime minister or corrupt people in Hollywood or, whatever these dark, Lady Gaga, dark minions, script runners. It's not, they're just executing the will of, quote, the screen, of the reality itself. And most of them aren't even aware of what they know, not what they do. They just are on such the frequency where they're not the same incarnation that you are. And they simply, without even, I'm completely convinced of this, they're not aware of ultimately what they're serving. They're not going up to the Illuminati window in the Chernobyl control center and the cue cards come out and say, George Bush, do this today. They just do it, serving the darkest parts of the screen without really knowing what they're doing. So it's not the minions. But then you get into, we're not going to spend a lot of time here because you get into we'll never truly understand it. The endless police lineup. It says here, my old police lineup. A Christian would say it's Satan. Satan. It's Enki. It's Enlil. It's the reptilians. It's the Archons. It's the Anunnakis. It's who knows what's what at this point in how far human beings have come. What is animating and putting the darkness and sending it back on steroids and trying to get it back into your reality bubble heart center? We don't know. Again, don't forget. Mostly, it's a reflection of ourselves. It's probably nothing you can point at. So what animates the screen, the ultimate deceiver that's trying to break into your reality bubble? We'll never know. Let's just forget about it. Stop talking about it. Stop breathing life into it. Realize you're probably doing it. I'm probably doing it. And then imagine it being completely cut off. That's the best we can do. Now, it wants you to believe you can go fight it. See, this is where you get into remember I've talked about get your pickup truck army together and get your complaint signs together and go fight it. I'm not against all protest. I'm not. I'm just, the lockdowns and some of the things in Australia and London and some of these good people that are, march and done in the right way to convince other generator beings and quantum reality creators and real people to get them on board in the right way. Some of those protests have done right. I understand it, of course. I'm talking about, at the end of the day, does it want us to get together our pickup truck armies and go fight it? Of course, whatever hangs at the periphery out here wants to be fought. Anything that creates division is exactly what it wants. So that doesn't mean, again, that I'm not for some of the things that have happened in the EU, etc. Okay. It just all It's all how it's done. The more that we get violent or aggressively or get in people's faces and put more, this is really what Alex Jones did. We didn't understand in 2004, 2005. Whenever he got his groups together and took to the streets of New York, there was that famous thing where he had people marching up and down, 9/11 inside job, 9/11 inside job, 9/11 inside job. They're just screaming and yelling. And, at the time we thought, well, at least somebody's doing something. At least he's, I watched, I'm honest about it. I watched Alex Jones for years. We were desperate to find somebody that had a huge audience that seemed to be doing something. But we understand now that's exactly what the screen wanted. Because the people that saw the person marching with his people screaming and yelling as they march with their banners, and it's done with a bullhorn, it's done that way. It creates division. People get turned off by it. It creates camps. That type of presentation, even though ultimately it was at the time it was the message that we were so longing to get out. It's what the screen wants. It's what the reality wants. If that's why a show like Alex Jones or whatever can deliver tons and tons of, never deliver the ultimate truth, the worry about yourself and understand yourself. Chiron's last today talking about self-mastery. Never will Alex Jones and the bunch will never talk about that. We will talk about truths in terms of understanding how dark operators operate in this world, and none of that really helps you with true self-mastery or worry about yourself. None of that. But that's what all of these truth shows are for. Because ultimately they'll give away that level of truth, which to us, or we had seen as high level truth. It's never the ultimate truth. They themselves don't even understand the ultimate truth. But ultimately to people like your friends and your family, it's just another camp. It creates infighting. It creates people fighting with other people, where my dad used to come to me and say, "Oh, did you hear what happened to your boy, Alex Jones?" And I'm like, I haven't watched him for years. What are you talking about? If he's in the news, then he wants me to still care about Alex Jones. He wants to fight with me about. It's exactly what the screen and the outer reality wants. A little bit better view for some people that are watching here, zoomed in on something here. I'll try to move it around the best I can. So what on the reality map has not been discussed? Well, the ladders. The ladders have not been discussed. Let me see what that says here. Hold on. Yeah, it says Chutes and Ladders. Chutes and Ladders. The game, Chutes and Ladders. Truth drop in those types of games? Oh, yeah, you better believe it. Okay, it's trying to build ladders down. It wants to penetrate your reality bubble. Even for us, for everybody, in some way it has penetrated, for some more than others. Some are completely The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, those types of shows, just simply an allegory where they're showing you what they believe the masses to be. And that's like a form of mockery. Those shows stink. They can run over and over, season after season after season after season. There's probably like 5 guys in Skokie watching. There's 5 people. The Orbitron shows 5 people tuning into those shows. They're run it's like a mockery. They're just showing you what they think of the masses. So they build their ladders down. When Lord of the Rings, like those movies, the golems, or what were they called, orcs, they build their ladders to get up and over the wall. It's similar here. Instead of up and over the wall, down or across the rings into your reality bubble. But people are also building ladders up. Remember, they want to get up to the screen. It's incredible. They must sit in the Illuminati Control Center, in Chernobyl control room, and be like, they must be so proud of themselves with their feet up on the control panels, going, we've got it. So we used to have to build these ladders and have all this deception, and we have to use to scale huge walls to penetrate the reality, heart-centered reality bubbles, and then to use these massive tricks to get in through the ego. Now we just sit here with our feet up on the desk, and they build ladders up to us. They're knocking on our front door to get in. They must be very proud. of their job. Yeah, I bet they are. I mean, we've no matter how much you have to engage with society and culture. I mean, people listening to this, we're not. Whenever we can, we're trying to cut it off, not feed it our energy and attention. We have, whenever our wake up moment was, we are in the middle of this society and culture. As I've said 1,000 times, it's hard to go take your kids and drag a cardboard box up to a mountaintop in Montana and just live there. But you can do the best you can daily. I don't want to stray too much in this video about removing power from your first name caps, last name caps, straw man, legal fiction, all that sort of thing. So let's see what some of the things here you couldn't read about the outer. This just it says Voldemort, Enki, reptilians. It's just that on the outer edge, that the endless police lineup of it's pointless. It will never be able to point at anything. It's not a cop out to say the reality itself working through its minions, because that is pretty much our best understanding of it, our only understanding. If something could be pointed at as the bad guy, we would have pointed at it by now. It doesn't exist. Well, Matt, it doesn't exist because it's a reflection of ourselves. Yeah, probably, but that's too. I don't know. That's too hard to. That just leads into loops, and there's no point going there. As long as you remember that, and if it is a reflection of ourselves, then you don't feed it. You cut it off. So it's just good to keep reminding ourselves of that. So this says here on the outer edge, it says blurry. Absolutely. As you get outer towards the outer rings, it becomes more fake, more corrupted, but it becomes blurrier. The Mandela effect could be a symptom of too many, quote, real people, just breathing life into the fakery of and the corruption of the outer bubble. It does here say, great, it does say reflection of ourselves, fluid, and over here it says the event horizon, and that is a good topic to discuss now, because remember, related to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, reflection of ourselves, in the movie The Event Horizon, you had Lawrence Fishburne's crew, Captain Miller, he had to go out and do this rescue or something. The ship, using this gravity drive, the Event Horizon, the gravity drive was some sort of contained black hole. That's always good to put in the engine. A black hole. What should we use to power the ship? A black hole? That sounds good. You're moving up fast. They put a black hole and they call it the gravity drive. Then it folds time space, and then you've seen the movie. Apparently, it goes through dimensions that aren't so good, and apparently went through hell itself. The hell dimension itself comes back, and then Captain Miller, Lawrence Fishburne, and his crew doesn't know Dr. Weir. Are you saying the ship's alive? They don't know what they're getting into, but Lawrence Fishburne's like, the ship, it shows you. The ship shows you your worst fears. And there's no doubt that engaging with the screen or the outer periphery of the bubble and the reality itself, it shows you what you need to be distracted. It gives the people that study the different, I knew somebody that actually was a huge believer. He's not alive now. He was a huge believer, not in globe, flat, whatever, in hollow. It's not just light beer from Miller, less filling or taste great, globe or flat. There's a whole nother segment that talk about hollow and Dyson spheres and even different shapes. So he was a big believer in that. So the reality not just fed both camps what they need to see, conflicting facts and information at the exact same time. There was a third or fourth camp in terms of the shape of this thing here. And he was fed by the Event Horizon reality, everything he needed to believe what he believed. No real world could pull this off. Let's get this. Anybody listening to this, that this channel is not for you. If you think it's secret societies running around doing everything, limited to men and women that sit down on the pot, it's not for you. Just one example by itself, the endless, I don't want to stray, the endless flat versus globe. There's thousands of evidence that supports both at the same time. It's not possible because they're completely conflicting things. Okay? There's put your best friend, your true best friend, not the best friends you've lost, your true best friend over here, and then bring Spike Lee into the room. You can't, the evidence, it's one or the other. One's a creep, one's your best friend. It's never going to be like, oh, there's Spike Lee, there's my best friend. I love this about both of them. No. I hate this about both of them. No. It's likely the best friend's going to have certain things that line up for the best friend and against Spike Lee. That's not the greatest example. But if the reality will step in and show, I didn't realize that Spike Lee has the same incredible, admirable traits as my best friend. No real world can do that. Let's look at this part here. It says John Dunbar, not Dunbar. Dunbar, John Dunbar, not Dunbar. What's your name? Stand up. John Dunbar, it says collective consciousness. It says acceptance. It says beliefs and consensus. Yeah, this is a critical part I should have talked about earlier. It expands out its power, or it feeds itself loosh or energy. It pushes its self inward through a collective acceptance, the collective conscious. There's individual reality bubbles, but there's no doubt the basis of reality here is formed from the belief set of the collective conscious of what we believe real people. Now, how many people here are real that have those generator abilities? We don't know. We don't know. There's all sorts of theories on that. It needs to extend its hand down towards the heart-based reality of real people to create acceptance. And there's us that we're like a little tiny, strange little breakout, club, the club that people down the cul-de-sac would say, a club for the insane. But how many real people are still out there that are, through its acceptance and the people's belief in it and consensus, are feeding exactly what the screen wants? And it's just like the Borg in Star Trek: The Next Generation. When the Borg come into the environment or the reality of the Enterprise, the ship Enterprise, they immediately start changing the environmental controls. They change the humidity settings. They change the temperature. The same way that the creeps that do the bidding of the screen or the reality from the outer edges of the screen, they get, quote, real people, whatever that means, to reflect back and create the sick, corrupted society that they need, that they want, that they feed from. What we just talked about a few videos back, the collective acceptance that it's just completely normal to go out and work your ass off, like say in a construction job, and then have 3 levels of government take up to 40%. And then that is the real money that that sweet ambrosia. Remember, in all of these types of analogies just pop into my head. I mean, Louis in Interview with a Vampire. To me, it's a vampire. Interview with a Vampire. Louis. Remember, they would didn't they have an issue if the vampires drank blood from a dead person, or if they had to survive, or it was always, didn't they have to drink from live, even if they had to go to rats? Something like, so it's like the blood from a dead person, the blood from a live person, the money, the energy and the loosh that comes to them from the sweat equity, the labors, is the sweet ambrosia energy they feed from, versus money they just create. It's like creating blood in the lab. Would Lestat and Louis and that little obnoxious Kirsten Dunst, would they if they could just create it in a lab, and the platelets in a lab, it wouldn't, you kind of can sense it wouldn't do much for Lestat, and it wouldn't do much for Louis and that creepy Antonio Banderas vampire who nobody would want to get too close to. I mean, they need the real stuff, and that's the money that comes from the sweat labor. So that's the constantly working, constantly getting up in your business to create a collective belief set and acceptance from a collective consciousness of real people. Here it says, John Dunbar. I'm not going to do it anymore, okay? I know. Half people like some of my dumb jokes, and some people are like, oh, get to it. Okay. This is appropriately here because it's the path, that movie, it's incredible. The path of a real human being. What does Kicking Bird say to him? He says, we're proud of you, basically. He says, you're finally walking or finding the path of a real human being. And just to talk just a few minutes on Dances with Wolves, so it is so incredible, so insightful. This John Dunbar, the Kevin Costner character, if you're screaming at me that nothing pure could ever come out of Hollywood, yeah, I understand your objection. This isn't my first rodeo. I'll get to that, or maybe we'll do that some other time. But I'm aware of that. I didn't just fall off the truth or turnip truck. You have the absolute worst path of a human being is shown in the absolute worst path is shown in the first few scenes. He is in the middle of war itself, in the middle of death for no reason itself, participating in it, riding out into the field, disease, death, injury. So nothing could be more one side of the scale towards the worst path of a human being. And slowly the path changes. He when he goes out to the soldiers' fort, I wanted to do it. I'm not going to do it. When he goes out to the soldiers' fort, he wears his cavalry clothing or his Union clothing for a few weeks, right? But then it slowly starts to come off, and they show him swimming naked in all symbolism, of course, and swimming naked in the pond or whatever. And then he doesn't wear the hat, and he's just wearing the shirt, and all by design. Even if the director or producer Kevin Costner, if they weren't even aware of it, then somehow, like Vanessa Villela, this is how the retrocausality works. So it can invade art, good messages, sometimes even when they don't even know they're putting out. But we can speculate on Dance with Wolves some other time. So then he starts wearing the Native American garb, and they switch. Remember, they trade. They said, you take the jacket, I'll take the ceremonial breastplate of beads and whatever that is. I don't know how to describe that. And they trade the hat. He gets rid of the hat, and he gets the knife instead. Just giving away things, giving away symbols of the wrong path, of what was once for John Dunbar the wrong path. Completely then finds the way of a real human being, seeing that the slaughter of the buffalo for their skins is wrong. So it's incredible. I mean, the movie, who knows why maybe they have to. We'll talk about some other time, guys. Why? But don't, it is about as pure of a movie as you're ever going to find. And The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, I'm going to do a whole video sometime as to the parallels between them. It is basically the same movie that for some reason the creeps needed to put out again. If you're a believer in karma, to help them, they give back over here so they can take bigger bites of the shit sandwich over there. If you're not a believer in karma, maybe they do it for other reasons, for contractual reasons. But these are pretty good pure movies, and it wouldn't be the first time. Most movies, of course, I know, are dark, corrupt. The intention is to get somebody in their heart base to reality, to extend the hand up to shake the creepy, slimy hand. I know that's the purpose of most of Hollywood, but we'll dive into that some other time. I should have done this a long time ago, but I didn't even cover the middle or this level here. So the outer, what stands outside the periphery, the screen, the dark reality, then inside, of course, heart-based reality, which is the most real. Then the head-based reality is the second layer. But the third layer is society itself, an engineered and completely fake and corrupted society itself, where they've got everybody believing this is just the best a modern society can do, and all these problems we experience in our gigantic to-do lists and unnatural long list of things we have to do, it's just the best we can do. The society itself and the culture is part of that. This whole ring here I really didn't even address. That's how the minions, the screen comes down through its minions, but they're also kind of a reflection of society, pop culture. It's just one of a thousand examples. a culture that is supported by politicians, a culture today where anybody can just on any day of the week just decide they're a different, you know what, this guy was Joe and now he's Mary or Susan. What that culture comes. So the society and the whole society culture on this whole outer ring is to just lean on with weight to influence the ego head-based reality, which of course is the conduit into the reality generation abilities of the real human being. So I didn't even address basically one of the most important rings. So I should have done that. Sorry. But you understand. I guess it was probably clear anyway. And if here says armor. Okay, armor. Well, what do we do? If you believe reality works like this, then it's obvious what to do. You create as much armor around your personal reality bubble as you possibly can. In terms of what do we do, does it mean physically shutting ourselves off and creating real armor? I mean, no. I mean, the scene in The Omen where the priest plastered pages of the Bible all over the walls and windows to keep something out, or do a Romeo. He takes to his room and makes himself an artificial knight, shuts up the curtains, makes himself an artificial knight. No, you can't keep it out physically. The armor, most of working on the armor to me is keeping the ego in check. The ego, this whole ring here, is to me a conduit, a potential hand that reaches up and grasps the outer rings and the minions and the screen and all the perversions and the deception. And it's not just reaching up to shake hands in today's society and culture with today's people down the cul-de-sac and in your family. They don't just want to shake hands. They want to do what they did in Avatar. Remember the blue creature in Avatar, the tail intertwined. They intertwined with the tail of its beast. Remember the thing it rode? They would like have some intimate intertwining. That's what the outer hand coming in. It wants more than a mere handshake from people today. So the armor, to me, has to be focused on first of all seeing the tricks, but keeping the ego in check, because the ego is the conduit. The ultimate hand that reaches up comes from the ego. This certain part of the brain, the part of the brain that we think that's all there is to us, the part of the brain or mind that thinks in the spellcraft and governor of English, all of that it is hijacked to a degree, it is infiltrated to a degree, and it might be engineered. People in truth community talk about it, engineered way back when by archons, or who knows, maybe the whole idea of two regions of the brain separated by one bridge, a corpus callosum, it don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. Then see, our whole lives in school and health class, you hear about two regions, completely separate regions of the brain, and the only way they have to talk to each other is that bridge, that corpus callosum. Then we hear, well, people that have severe epilepsy, they just go in and cut the corpus callosum. Well, then how do the regions of the brain talk to each other? And if regions of the brain can't talk to each other, then how does the person function? But they say, well, they function pretty normally. Well, which is it? We hear our whole lives it's the corpus callosum. We don't ever hear this, do we? The corpus callosum is the primary bridge, but the brain has many other ways to communicate with itself. That's not what we were told. So it doesn't make any sense. So it just goes back to, if some archon engineered the damn thing, which is probably a hologram of some kind anyway, that is the conduit or the direct TV dish between your real consciousness that's probably not even here. It's not consciousness, it's not coming from between the ears, and it's somewhere else that's attached to your spiritual self. The brain is more like a walkie-talkie, a receptor. So it could have been hijacked. But then again, it's all speculation. It's all pointless. The only thing that matters is worry about yourself. That's all whether they hijacked it or not. We are here in the avatar, and we have a way out. We're not. If we were doomed, they wouldn't work so hard. The most important part, or if I could pick 5 things, if I could say 5 things this whole channel was about for how many ever years, one of the main 5 things would be, if we were so screwed and doomed, then they wouldn't be working so hard. Pretty simple. If they're trying to work your consciousness into a Ray Kurzweil, like we just talked about, downward into digital zeros and ones, into a computer simulation, transforming reality itself more towards the matrix, sliding it down the scale, then they're trying to keep you farther and farther away from the way out, or farther and farther away from finding yourself. If the distance they created was so vast that they didn't have to worry about it, they wouldn't keep working to change reality into, basically slide it down the scale into a matrix. So that's very good news that they keep trying to work hard. I've said before, worry when they no longer have to do anything. They just start, the society just looks like kind of what you want it to be. The creeps are freely giving you what you think you want, and you turn on the news and it's like, that was completely real. Everything presented was, when they stop working, then worry. If they're working as hard as they're working now, see, that's good news. See, it's not that dark. But the things that matter anyway. If your whole life in reality is just about getting that 5th lick at a German Lower Bavarian ice cream shop, and that's all it's about, then you got big problems. You ain't gonna ever get that 5th lick on premises. Your whole life is they want your whole life based upon that trivial shit, the 5th lick. I ain't never gonna get no 5th lick in this COVID environment. This is, and I've been threatened to be arrested 10 times because I try to take the 5th lick on premises. That's bullshit. These are minor rewards that the reality gives you and wants you to covet. Minor reward. It's no different. The 5th lick on premises, it ain't no different than a Nobel Prize. Ain't no different. It's just a little pleasure that's associated with this reality. The bigger thing that I think the next, you have to put into years, things we can understand. I think the next 10 trillion years are slightly more important than whatever's happening now with the sea positioning. I don't know. It's just me. I understand why most people think the next year and a half for sea is more important than the next 10 trillion years in your eternal existence. I got to put into years something we understand. I can see why people think the 5th lick is more just as important. I don't give a shit. As long as I don't want jackboots to come in here and throw me down and put something into me, or I don't want to be in some sort of some sort of tiger cage prison where I can't even I want to be left alone. But in terms of all the ways that manipulate society, at this point, who cares? Honestly, you think you're going to be able to get your pickup truck army together and go fight it? That's exactly what it wants. If everybody just would realize, maybe the way I've drawn this is wrong, but if the basics are the basics are right, and if it's just one basic, that ultimately all this bullshit is a reflection of ourselves, completely cut it off, keep the ego mind in check, understand when it's trying to get its sticky fingers into your reality bubble through the ego mind, don't let it in, cut off its power, strengthen your spiritual armor. Online, when it says, do you want to accept these terms? Yeah, I'll accept the terms because I need new cable. But I ain't accepting. I'm not going to read this fine print. And if there's anything here that's saying I'm giving myself away or giving it power or energy, I don't comply with that. That's not what I'm doing. Remove the power from it. If you click, I got to click, I'm not a robot to get to this damn website. So I got to, but does it imply I am a robot and I'm a robot but I have to keep saying and keep reiterating that I'm not? So these are just constantly notice the tricks and remove power from the tricks. Strengthen the armor around your own reality bubble. Doesn't mean you have to go live on a mountaintop in a cardboard box. Just withdraw. You can go to the grocery store. Just you know what you need to do. It's literally this simple. It is literally this simple. It is one half page. It is one diagram. Guys, if you want the reality map, please email me. But it's hard right now for me to keep up with email. Really hard. If you just maybe in a few days or spread it out instead of emailing me all at once. My email address is at. I'm not going to give it out now. It's just through my website, quantumofconscience.com. Remember, that's spelled conscience. Quantumofconscience.com. And if anything happens to the channel, quantumofconscience.com and freevoice.io if anything happens to the YouTube channel.